Welcome to the Next Level Podcast with Dr. Leslie. That is me. Good to see all of you again this time. I have a really awesome guest. I'm really excited to chat with her and have her on the show. Her name is Ro Clausen. She has a really amazing story. We'll get into that in a minute. This is going to be a little bit of a tell here. She has a nonprofit she started in 2009 called the Strong Prison Wives and Families Nonprofit. It's still going.
Yeah.
Right now, right? Okay, we'll get into that in a little bit. And she has a book on Amazon that she was almost not going to tell me about. The Comeback Code?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all about the strategies she used to cope while she met Adam, who was in prison. We'll get to that in a little bit too. Like, huge. That's everything that my podcast is about. So a supercharged, amazing woman I have sitting with me today to tell me all of the things that she did to get to the next level in her life and her love life and her personal life. And now she has a baby and all of those amazing things. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, not only to be having this conversation with you, but to be in the girly room, because my podcast is down the hall and it's kind of like masculine in there and it's perfect for our podcast. But I'm like, yeah, I get to hang with the girls today in the girly room.
It is. It totally is.
Yeah.
And I don't take offense to the girly room. It totally is. We're seated. It's like Oprah style.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty
It's
cool.
like girlfriends hanging out.
It's girlfriends hanging out for
Yeah.
sure. We've got our coffee and our water, and we should have some wine spritzers or something. I feel
know,
like,
but then we'd get really bitchy.
It's right. It's coffee talk, but it's
coffee
not.
talk.
It's bitchy talk.
Everybody's like, you don't sound like you're from New Jersey. And I'm like, wait until I say coffee.
Let's bring it. That's so cool. All right, so let's just jump right in. So I had Adam, your husband, on the show last week, and he was sentenced to prison for like 213 years, right?
Yep.
He served 20.
Yep.
Triumphant journey out. He has the superhuman ability to create and manifest and use the power of his mind, his energy to create. You met him while he was in prison. Girl, tell me, how did that happen?
I know. And I've been hearing his story so much recently, or for our story from his perspective. And a couple times I have to stop and I'm like, oh my God, I kind of sound like pathetic and desperate. And I said that to somebody one time and he was like, own it. No, you don't. This is a story of triumph and perseverance. So own that. And I'm like, all right, way to reframe. Yes. And I have to, because I did go through a lot to get to where we are now, which is, thank God we got him home. But yeah.
So what was it? That's great. So what is it that made you feel pathetic?
Well, I think there's I know that there's a stigma associated, especially with women who date men who are in prison. Mm-hmm. And I get it because, there's those like pen pal ads. And when I did start the nonprofit, there were a lot of people online and a lot of them were writing in with these questions like, hey, I think he's using me for money. He's asking me for $500 a month, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, girl, he is. Yeah. And so a lot of my job, not only, I'm like way jumping ahead, but a lot of my job, not only supporting people with, how to cope with having a loved one inside emotionally and physically, as far as like, what do I wear to visit? What do I bring to visit? That type of thing. But also like, okay, honey, you have to be strong enough to say this isn't working for me and I have to go.
Right. That's so confusing for a woman. Like, you connect. So we're jumping around, but it's so valuable because there is so much confusion. You want someone, there's women that truly have an emotional connection with someone, or do they? And how do you sort of sort through what's real, what's not in the interaction?
I think it's similar to dating somebody out here, right? It's a matter of time and you get to figure out if you're being used or they're lying to you, or if you're going to ride off in the sunset and live happily ever after.
Yeah.
But I think it's just giving it time. Some people say you can even give them tests. So what I would say to those girls who, he wants $500 a week, well, tell him I can't pay my rent this month, so I can't give you the money this week. And if he freaks out on you or starts berating you or stops talking to you, then you know that that's a red flag.
Yeah, very nice. So that's great. Those are some really practical things. And that's very true. Everything is sweet and nice when you're sweet and nice and they're getting what they want and, you're give. But the moment that you stop, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
The response is the answer.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Yeah.
So let's jump back to, how did you meet Adam?
So I was doing like the Jersey Shore thing. That is like a real thing. So I met this guy down the shore. It was the summer, we were hanging out, and winds up like he was just using me. And I was hanging out with this girl who I called my cousin. We're not actually blood related, but our mothers grew up together. So like a respect thing. I'd call her parents aunt and uncle. I called her and her siblings cousins. And I'm on her front porch and I'm crying. And I was like, he's just using me, this and that. And she's like, listen, my boyfriend. Oh, I almost said his name. I don't want to say his name.
We could have bleeped it out, but there you go. Good.
Her boyfriend was incarcerated at that time, and he had just moved to this new place. So she's like, listen, he met this guy. I think you guys would really get along. Why don't you reach out to him? They had just gotten an email at the facility. Why don't you guys email back and forth? And I'm like, why? Like, for what? She's like,
so initially you were skeptical. You're like, are you crazy? Like,
exactly.
Girl, you are setting me up with someone in prison.
Exactly.
For real? Okay.
Exactly. And she was like, no, like just to bounce this kind of stuff off. It's a guy's like an outside opinion. You could ask him, is this guy using you or not? And I was like, no.
So she thought getting someone who was in prison's advice on the guy's situation would be helpful for you. Like that's
how she presented it to me.
She was selling you on it.
Exactly.
You found out that wasn't good.
That wasn't true. But that's how she was presenting it to me. And
sneaky. Are you still friends with her?
No.
Okay.
No. It's a whole different story.
Okay. Another episode.
Exactly. Right. So I went home. I kind of slept on it. And I woke up the next day and I'm like, what's the harm? Sure. Okay. You can send me his information. And we started emailing. And oh my God, Leslie, it was like, it felt like immediately, but every time I would see his name in my inbox, I was like butterflies in my stomach. Because when you're in, and it was just friendship at first, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm developing feelings for this guy, because you can go deep and you could talk about these things on like this deep, deep level because there's no physical. So you're kind of forced to.
Right.
And we were so much alike, and he's just a sweetheart. So it just escalated.
Wow. So it started with email. And when did you actually meet him in person?
So it was only about 3 weeks later, but it felt like we had known each other forever.
3 weeks, if you're emailing, probably he emailed almost every day.
Oh, easily every day. Oh, maybe a couple times.
3 weeks is forever.
Right?
Yeah.
So what happens is in the facility he was at, you could visit Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but also federal holidays you could visit. Like, so if President's Day or something, it's a bank holiday, it's a federal holiday, you can visit. So it just so happened to be, I think it was a Labor Day weekend. So again, my friend was like, come with me. We'll go visit. We could go Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So what I found out, or like we pieced together later, was that her boyfriend was like, listen, it's a 3-hour drive. I don't want her to have to make it by herself. If she's staying in hotels, she'll have somebody with her. So
they were making a case for you for sure.
Yes. Absolutely. So yeah, but we visited, and I mean, I guess you could say joke's on them, because it was like, but it was also, so I went to this visit and I was like, oh God, I'm in big trouble. Like, he's amazing. But on the other hand, I left crying because I'm like, this is a cruel joke from the universe. Like, I can never be with this man.
Yeah. Oh, my heart just sank. My stomach literally just, I felt like, right, I feel for you. You're developing feelings. You finally see him. He's tall, he's handsome. Like, I could see being in your shoes and like, and he's serving a 200 and forever sentence. Yeah. And how far in was he?
He was 9 years at that point.
And so he served 12 or 20. So, well, it doesn't matter. You didn't know at that time it was only going to be 20 years, right? So, right. So you left there crying. What happened next? Like, what was your mindset? Where were you at?
So I was depressed, but also like, he's amazing. So I remember this so vividly. One of my good friends was like, listen, meet me for lunch the following day. Let's talk through this. So I did. And she's like, how did visit go? I said, oh, Karen, he's perfect. And she was like, I was like, I know, I get it. She goes, listen.
Like, I'm not oblivious to the situation.
Right.
But, oh my God, this guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she goes, why don't for once you just follow your heart and see where it takes you? You don't have to stay with him. You can live day by day. She goes, you're such a people pleaser. You've lived for so many other people for so long. Live for yourself for once. And I took that to heart, and I did. And literally it's not easy to be with somebody long distance, especially somebody in prison. And now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, it was fine. I did it. But you spend Christmas alone, birthdays, holidays, all of that stuff. It gets depressing, especially for us. We didn't have like an expiration date. And so I would just live by that 24-hour rule. Can I do this? Do I want to keep doing this?
Every day you woke up recommitting to that relationship or not.
Yep.
Okay, that is, everyone listening, that's for real.
Yeah.
And that is a very important piece to extract when you're going through a difficult time, no matter what it is. It really is day by day and sometimes moment to moment to just get by. Do not think about the future. The present right now is the only thing that matters. That's what gets you to the next day. It's what gets you into the manifestation and the creation of what you guys so magically created.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you lived it. Firstly, also, your friend is amazing for giving you that advice. She came at the right time. If there was someone else who gave you some different advice, you might not be here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just love those types of pivotal moments, right? There's always those pivotal moments where it's like almost a fork in a road, or you get to decide, right? So it was wonderful that you had that person there to be that positive voice on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So you took her advice. You were like, okay, I'm reinvigorated. What next?
So we kept our communication going. I started visiting him every single weekend. And then he had put in for a transfer right before we were in touch. And he was awarded this transfer. And he had put in to go to Wisconsin.
No. Where?
Oh. So that was 10 hours by car away from me at that point.
Oh, wow.
And so where I was going was like 2.5, 3 hours, which was manageable. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to be by his family. It was supposed to be a much better facility because he's going from a maximum security to a medium. And I remember him like, there's like a culinary program, and there's this and there's that, and there's vegetables. So, because there's no vegetables at the high security prison. Isn't that mind blowing? Like, people are there for decades without vegetables. So this is in my head. And that friend was driving me to visit. We took turns. I would drive one weekend. She would drive one weekend. So she was driving this weekend, and she's like, you have to tell him you don't want him to move. And I said, absolutely not. Like, he needs to go. The whole, like, this is so cliche, but if you love something, let it go, set it free. Sure. So I couldn't hold him back from all that and leave him in this place that's like a battlefield.
That's unconditional, by the way. Loving someone and letting them go, that's truly selfless. It's unconditionally loving. You want them to be happy no matter what.
Yes.
You are an amazing woman just from that. That's huge.
Yeah. So she said to me, if you don't, and she's joking, of course, but she's like, if you don't tell him today, I'm not driving you home. You're going to walk home. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So we're sitting in visit, and they just so happen to be at the table diagonal from us. Adam's back is to them, and I'm facing them. And I see her boyfriend like turning around, looking at me, right? And they're like, so obviously he's very perceptive, and he's like, what's going on over there? And I'm like, nothing, they're just being stupid. He's like, no, what's going on? And I'm like,
spill the beans.
I don't want you to go. And he goes, so I won't go. And I'm like, you have to go. And he was like, no, I don't. I'll see if I can put in. I'm like, you have to go. They have vegetables.
You're so cute. And you know how much vegetables, well, not just vegetables, but nutrition is too.
And nutrition and like just everything. Yeah. And I was like, well, figure it out. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work out between us. I mean, that's really far. But I'm trying to sell it to him. Like, we'll figure it out. Everything will be fine. He wound up putting in to go to some place that was a little bit closer. So it was 6 hours by car. And it wound up being the biggest blessing in disguise. He did get sent there. Okay. So I would go, I tried to go every 2 weeks originally. I would take, I didn't take vacation. I would use my vacation days from work, and I would take off the Friday so I could drive. Mm-hmm. And then I would visit him Saturday, Sunday. I would drive the 6 hours home, get home like 9, 10 at night and go to work the next day.
Right.
But he was with this guy that he was his mentor when he first got into prison, that high security prison. And he got him into fitness classes. He got him on the right track because he could have easily gone on the wrong track as a lifer and all that stuff. So they got them back in touch, and he was like his mentor for the rest of the time that they were together. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it all worked out.
It all worked out.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing how, I mean, again, you vocalizing from your heart, expressing what you needed and wanted, that takes a lot of courage too.
Yeah.
Your whole journey is courageous and brave just from the beginning, taking a leap of faith, following your heart. On that note, a lot of the clients that I work with, they have a hard time listening to their inner guidance, whatever that is. People call it their intuition or their heart, or there's different ways that we feel what's true to us. So what do you say about that? Like, what was that for you to just follow your heart? Was that difficult for you? Did you, like, just share with me what that experience was like?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of times we don't know if it's our intuition, if it's our anxiety, if it's just like this weird voice in our head. So with my relationship specifically, I did reassess every single day. I did allow myself to get quiet. And in those drives on the way to visit, I would listen to all kinds of like self-help books and all this stuff, because I said to myself, I will not let this control me. I will take control over whatever I can, and I'm going to make this a positive experience, which is a lot of mindset and a lot of shifting your mindset. Like I would turn those weekend-long visits into my mini vacations versus, oh my God, I have to go visit prison, this, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a lot of like getting quiet, getting still, reassessing my relationship. And we both became life coaches while he was inside. So they started the very first life coaching program for inmates. And then
that's crazy. I love that.
So crazy, so cool. They were able to do so many things that have never been done before, and unfortunately were taken away after he left. But I was also gifted a scholarship to go through the life coaching program. So we were able to, and we still to this day, do a lot of like coaching practices with one another. We do a gratitude practice before bed, and just all of that stuff really helped me get in tune with that intuition, to be able to listen to that. And I really knew, like, this is for all of our girlfriends out there, because people were always trying to set me up. I'm the second oldest of 6 kids. Everybody else was in a relationship, married, kids, right? And so people were like, what's wrong? Like, I have somebody for you. And I would always get this weird pit in my stomach because I never, it was hard for me to tell people about my relationship. I tried a couple times early on, and you would get like, at best to your face, people would be like, oh, okay. And then whisper behind your back.
Of course.
Or at worst, and what happened more often was that people would say the most cruel, harsh things.
Oh my God, really?
And I'm like, really? Like, I would never say that to you, you know? So I just stopped. And my family owned businesses in the town that I lived in. So like, I never wanted that to cross and people to not be patrons of their business, because, you know, that's the girl with the murderer, because people don't understand that laws are very different. Nobody was even seriously hurt during his crimes. It was just the laws were kind of funky.
Of course. Yeah. Wow. So there's so much in that that's so inspiring. When you said you get quiet, and so this is one of those practical tools that I like to extract. I have a practice that I do to get quiet, and quiet, I mean, back me up here. Getting quiet is the number one first thing everyone and anyone needs to do anything in terms of evolving or being able to make the right decision, and just to be a human being. This is like a fundamental requirement. I mean, they need to be teaching this in schools.
100%.
I mean, we cannot function as human beings without getting quiet and knowing basically how we make decisions, who we are, and what really drives us and how we operate best in the world. To be able to really understand all those things, you need to be able to get quiet and figure that out. In that quiet, you connect with your heart, you connect with your intuition, you get clarity. The mind stops, because the mind, as we all know, there's gurus all over the world that talk about mindset and controlling the mind. And, it's so dysfunctional. We've got this primal brain that's wanting to survive, and that's not always works in our favor, or it's using our past experiences thinking that it's going to keep going. So what do you do to get quiet? You said you were in the car and you'd listen to music, but how did you start that? What sparked you needing to get quiet, and how do you use that today?
Yeah, I love this because especially now it's so hard to get quiet. When things get quiet, people get so uncomfortable now, like pick up our phone or have to have noise in the background. Yeah. It's so crazy because you are I could talk to you for hours about this. You're so on point with this. It's so important, but it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So for me, years ago, I competed in fitness, and I was always going to like these underground gyms or CrossFits and all of this stuff. And it was always like harder, faster, stronger, So one of my girlfriends was like, come to a hot yoga class with me. And I'm like,
it's
okay,
like the complete opposite.
Right. It was so uncomfortable to be in that class because I couldn't slow myself down, and I couldn't like comprehend at first, like, why do they want me to go slower? Why do they want me to breathe? Like, I'm used to guys like, come on, like you're a trainer, like toughen up.
Yeah.
So like literally
so
slapping my glutes. Like it's weird.
Right. And some people, when they walk into the yoga class, they go in that state.
Yes.
They're like, they don't talk and they're just so zen. And I could imagine that'd be very uncomfortable. I know my very, very first yoga class, that was the experience. I was like, oh, I loved it. I was seeking that, but it was just like, oh, wow, people are like for real quiet.
Yeah. And then you have this loud Italian girl, fitness girl from New Jersey that's like, this is so uncomfortable. But same, I loved it. It was uncomfortable, but in that good way. And Adam was teaching yoga. I used to say, I'm like, you pretzel? Like, huge criminals in like on the prison yard, just the thought of it.
Get out. Yeah. Oh my God.
So we bonded over that. We bonded over
hilarious.
Like that spiritual stuff. And so the more I did it and the more we talked about it, the more I learned about it and the more I just really wanted to do it. Now it's kind of hard because I have an 18-month-old. So there's no quiet in my life. But I use a lot of my workouts as quiet. Like my mom was from Italy, very Roman Catholic, and she's like, you don't go to church. And I'm like, yeah, but on Sunday mornings I go and I run stairs and hills. And to me, that's like the equivalent.
Right.
That's how I get like spiritual and in nature. And I'm moving, but it's quiet. And that's what I try to do now with my workouts.
I was also preparing for my first bikini muscle competition, which I did in 2017. And so I would do cardio every day. It was just part of the whole thing that I did. It was in the middle of a divorce and all this crazy wild stuff is happening, this relationship, whatever. I remember, I can see it so vividly. I would be on my bike doing my cardio because I would work out usually twice a day. And I would meditate. I would do these guided meditations that connected me to my energy. It was very extra spiritual. Now I'm balanced, I'm not so up in my head. I'm like very grounded and I'm like a real person now. I feel like I wasn't like a normal person back then. It was like very just a wild experience. But when I was exercising, I literally would be able to get into this trance state, this very, very alpha brainwave state where I would be deeply connected, deeply receptive. I would get these insights and downloads of information and just things that would help me on my journey. Where they came from, who knows? People could, fill in the blank, but it was a very real experience. And we talked, I believe with Adam about this, that executives are starting to use like brainwave states to tap into their higher creative energies and insights or whatever you want to call it. So for me, exercise became my meditative outlet. And I was able to sustain 3 years walking around at whatever 13% body fat or whatever I had, which is crazy for a girl, because I would use that time as my stillness. And I trained my brain at that point to shut off and get very connected with who I was and what I was experiencing, what I needed to become, who I wanted to be, how I was going to get through. So I feel like the mind, body, quiet, that quiet, if you call it a spiritual or an energy practice or whatever, the mind, body, soul connection together for me is supercharged. Some people will just be traditionally meditative, right? In that quiet stillness. For me, getting my physical body involved, it's like next level for me. So is that what you experience, or do you still do that now? Like walking or exercising and meditating, and what does that like experience feel like to you versus being in a wakeful, regular state?
Yeah. So I think especially people that compete in fitness, I think that we're extremists. So like we'll take everything to the next level. So I'm so on the same page with you. And I think a lot of times like the fact that you can separate your brain, that's what I used to do in CrossFit. Like it's hard and you're dying and you look at the clock and you're like, oh my God, I still have 5 minutes or 20 minutes of this. Like I could separate. I feel like this is so weird. You go into
an altered state.
Yes.
It's for real. And people who are listening, they're like, oh, it's so bogus and spirituality and everything. This is real. Like there's science backing this. Executives, like high level people are using it and it's becoming more mainstream. We can totally manipulate the conscious state that we are in. And so that's what you do. So yeah, what was that? How did that feel? How did that like experience shape even your fitness and your ability to achieve more?
Yeah, this is so crazy. It feels like an out of body experience, right? Like it almost feels like, I don't see it, but it feels like you're watching yourself do it versus you're in the moment doing it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, it helps me be able to get through that pain. And like people do it with childbirth. Like it's any aspect of life. It's not necessarily just fitness, but that's where I excel. And even like after I did have my baby, I went through a really hard postpartum period. I just didn't realize it in the moment. Like you're told like, well, if you don't want to kill yourself or your baby, you're totally fine. Keep going on with life and it'll be over in 6 weeks. A year later, I'm looking back like that was really hard. So, and it's still really hard. So what I did was I told myself, okay, I need to get out. I need to get fresh air. I need to get vitamin D and I need to move my body every day. And this is in addition to my workouts. I walked every single day, put the baby in the stroller. We would walk and my condition was I'll go as long as I feel like I want to go. It can't feel stressful. It can't feel like an additional workout. And sometimes I would run. Sometimes I wouldn't run. Sometimes I would go 3 hours. Sometimes I would go 20 minutes. It didn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get back to that state and to really help myself get back to a more balanced place.
So how do you temper your extremist tendency?
It's so hard.
So yeah, like what strategy do you use? Because I'm the same way. I've had that tendency my whole life. I've learned mostly logically, like I have these little talks with myself, like, dude, you have this tendency. Okay, we know this about you. You're going to go to the extreme, blah, blah, blah. Look at what's happened in the past. Like I have to like self-talk.
Yeah.
Like I'm coaching myself. This is you. We've established this is your pattern. It's okay. Like I don't have the guilt or the blame or the shame or anything of how many times I've burnt myself out and totally destroyed my physiology and my mind and the whole thing. But it's like, okay, you should not do this.
Yeah.
Right? So let's sit back and let's do, a little assessment of what are your goals here?
Yes.
Like, what is your intention? Are those intentions pure? Are they realistic and aligned with what your end game is in life? And then let's figure out how you can do that if it is in alignment, and usually it is, in a way that's going to preserve your balance and honor how I operate in the world and who I am and all the things. So I have to be very logical, and then I go into my still quiet to figure out how I best do that. And by getting quiet and meditating and really connecting with my body when I'm quiet, I can tell whether I'm staying balanced or not. So I'm constantly checking myself. I have a process called the remap process that helps me kind of through just my self-evolution very rapidly and efficiently and practically that I share with my clients. But so I use that, but within each step, there's like micro steps. And so this like constantly reevaluating my progress and where I am. And am I staying true with my boundaries and staying on top of, what my goal is and not overdoing it and all that stuff. Like I'm constantly checking. I'm constantly on, like I'm constantly self-coaching. It's a full-time job sometimes.
Yeah.
Like when you're wanting to get to a next level, right? So what do you do?
So first of all, I think sometimes we look at that as a negative, and I don't think it's necessarily always a negative, because it takes gritty people like my podcast to get us to the next level.
Right.
You know, a lot of people are just so content with status quo, and that we're not.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those practices that you just said, I'm tracking all the way. I want to hear more about your remap process, by the way. It sounds amazing. And you said the word boundaries, 100%. It's exactly what I have to do. And the only thing I think I can add to what you said is a lot of times I have to look at where I was to see where I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Because like there were times, like just going back to the fitness example, that I would go to the gym and there would be a day that we were trying to get test our 1 rep max and see if we beat our personal record, you know, and I didn't hit it. Or even just like a regular workout, like I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. I didn't lift as much as I wanted to. And it would like set the tone for the rest of my day. Yeah. And I was like, it's like ridiculous, right? And I remember having a coach one day saying to me, Roseanne, if you lifted more every single time you came into this gym, you'd be lifting 1,000 pounds in a couple months. Like that doesn't make sense, right? And then another coach at a completely different gym, I overheard him say something similar to a man who was trying to do his deadlift, and he was having an off day. He had a wrist injury. Like it was just, everything was working against him.
Yeah.
But we all get in our ego. And he was like, it's an hour at the gym. It's not your whole life. Like you're going to go home and take out a bad lift on your children.
Right.
So I just tell myself, like I look back, like I would get so mad if I didn't do all 15 reps in a set, you know? And now I look back, I'm like, but I looked better every time. So everything was fine.
Yeah.
It's hard to do it in the moment. It's so hard to give yourself those boundaries and to check your ego almost. But yeah, you just have to set them. And I think the trick is to actually stick to them and live within them.
Absolutely. And that's so valuable. I was hearing you basically say, and I was the best person at beating myself up. You had dirty talk. You talked bad to yourself. Ro, I did too. I mean, our language is so powerful. Like we should all over ourselves. Not shit. We should. I should be doing more, and I want to do more. And it's like, we just push. But then again, it eats away at our mental state, our happiness. Like I am non-negotiable now. I have a hard boundary with myself about where I want to live. It is love, peace at minimum, love, joy, bliss.
Love it.
All the time, nothing less. I do not dive below those vibrations. If I do, I take time out, I reset if people notice it, because I'm not one of those people who can conceal my emotions very well. Like when I'm bright, the whole world shines. When I'm not, I could burn the world.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, you know, and I know how to not be that, but sometimes I just have to be a recluse, and I know why I get those. Those are very creative times for me. I up level a lot during those times, but we need to be very aware. We need to be very aware of our self-talk, of the power of that self-talk, not beating ourselves up, and like just really remembering what we want to create in our life, right? It's about the intention. So for me, I know I want to live in these states of being all the time, because those are where I maximize my creativity. I get opportunities. Things just flow to me so naturally. And when I beat myself up, it doesn't happen. I don't like it. And it's a miserable negative cycle.
Can I teach you a trick? Oh, sorry. You
yes,
weren't done. Oh my God. I love this trick. I have a couple tricks.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what this is all about, bro.
This is so fun.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm getting ready.
Okay. So somebody taught me this, and I taught my friend, and she still teases me with this to this day. Okay. So they were like, the way that we speak to ourselves is so mean. Would you ever speak to a 3-year-old like that? Nobody ever would. My God.
Right.
God, I hope not. So they're like, take a picture of yourself at 3 years old and put it in your wallet, put it on your mirror, put it someplace that you'll see it. So when you're looking in the mirror, you put it on your mirror and you're saying all these horrible things to yourself. Look at that 3-year-old. Would you have said it to her? Then why are you saying it to yourself? Because she still lives within you. So the reason I said that about my friend is because, we have this video chat. We go back and forth on the Marco Polo app where we video. Okay. So we all start like this. It's crazy. Like, oh, sorry about my hair today. Oh my God, I look so tired. And then I go into what I want to say, right? She took a screenshot of a picture my sister put on Instagram of all of us when we were little, and she'll just text it to me and be like, say it to her. And I'm like, you're right. Okay, so that's one, the 3-year-old. Find the picture of yourself if you can. Good. Yeah, and if you can't find a picture of yourself at 3, because a lot of people can't, find a picture of a 3-year-old or whatever age that resonates with you. The second thing is mirror work. So you take dry erase markers, old lipsticks, old eyeliners, and I have this all in my book, but you just write your affirmations on the mirror where you look every day, or you could do sticky notes if you don't want to write on your mirror. That's one. And then this is another one I just heard the other day. I thought it was so good. She said every time she got out of the shower and she put lotion on her body, that's usually when you're touching, you're like, oh, there's some cellulite. Yeah. It got soft. She has to say, that's her rule. She has to say positive things to herself while she's putting lotion on her body. So number one, she's distracting herself from seeing all those perceived flaws, because they're never flaws. Sure. You're beautiful regardless. Right. And number two, it's affirmations. So she's saying them so she can believe them. So those are my few little tricks.
Those are really great. Actually, the stickies on the mirror.
Yeah.
I do that.
Love it.
It's so funny you said about writing on the mirror, because my sticky notes are like little tiny things. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I really want it bigger because I have big intentions. I'm a big energy. So I'm like, I want to write it big. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, what could I use on my mirror? But
dry erase.
Dry erase. Okay. I was thinking marker, but will that stick, but I like the eyeliner. I have some old eyeliner that I could just use probably too. Right.
Yeah.
Like the chalk, not the chalk ones, but like the pencil ones. Yeah. Pencil ones should work. Right. Yeah. That's really great. Yeah. I think I might do that. Yeah. So affirmations is that something that you do regularly too, or do you use them just when you're wanting to get to a next level in your life? Or
I should use them regularly.
Again, that's a swear word. That's the S.
I know. You're right.
You just should on yourself.
Oh my God. Now I have to count how many times I say it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's crazy. Another tip. How many times are we shoulding on ourselves?
Yeah.
You make it a must. It's not like you just do it or you don't, but shoulding is it's a bad word.
Yeah. And it makes me think of like my
And it makes you think like, you're not doing it and I'm inferior. No, you do it when you need to and you don't when you don't. And that's okay.
Yeah.
If you want to do it more, you can.
I love this.
You can give yourself permission to do it or not.
Yes. I love this so much. Yeah. But usually I do them more when I'm really focused on something.
Right.
But something we do, there's this really cute affirmations for kids on YouTube. So we play that for Christian every morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And they're really good.
Oh, I want that.
Right? And like I'm saying them with it. So yeah, it's doing something in here too. They're really good. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the neuroplasticity, those little brains, 18-month-old brains. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
You guys are good parents.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we kind of jumped way away from a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about, but very, very amazing strides that we've made. So going back to meeting Adam and the back and forth every other weekend, we have a bunch of strategies we learned from you about how you coped with that. So what ended up happening? Like we were talking about people kind of giving you some backlash, and were you ever pushed out of any of your communities or circles for being with Adam or for pursuing that? And what about when you got serious? Like, did you get engaged? Like, I want to know all of those things.
Yeah. So I'm trying to sit here and think, I don't think I was ever pushed out of anywhere.
Okay.
But more than anything, I retracted because it started to get difficult to explain it. And it's this horrible feeling because part of you is like, I'm in this new relationship and it's wonderful and I want to shout it from the rooftops. And the other part is like, but I can't. I did try a couple times, and from the responses, I was just like, you know, number one, I don't want to have to try to explain it. Number two, the more I tried to explain it, the worse he looked, right? Because it looked like he was lying to me. People don't understand sentencing laws in the United States. They're rough.
Yeah.
So, so I just kind of like did my own thing, and I told the people that I trusted, and there were actually a few people at work that knew, and they handled it really well, which was good because like my boss didn't know. But oh my gosh, here's a story. I started a YouTube channel when I started my nonprofit. So somehow, and it was like starting to take off, and I was just trying to get eyes on Adam's case and help other people in my shoes. And this guy at work comes up to me. He found it. Oh. And he was like, so about that lifer. Oh. Right. And I was like, I go, listen, we need to go out in the hallway and talk about this because this isn't getting to HR. And he was like, okay. And I was very firm with him, and he backed off. But I went in my car that day and I played small. I went in my car and I shut down the YouTube channel because I was like, I can't take the risk, right? I need my job because my job afforded me those vacation days to be able to take. If I started a new job, I wouldn't have had them. I was at my job for so long that I could take the vacation days to drive to visit, to go see him, to nurture my relationship. So I played small, and I promised myself after that, because it felt so awful, like so disgusting to cower, but I kind of felt like my hands were tied. But I promised myself I would never do that again. I'm never going to play small because somebody threatened me.
Oh, so you were threatened.
It felt like a threat. It wasn't necessarily a threat, but my job felt threatened because I was working with this nonprofit for so long. There were women who would come in and be like, they got fired for something bogus, whatever it was. I don't remember the exact thing at the time, right after somebody found out their husband was incarcerated. Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So I just didn't want to take that risk.
Sure.
But that was the one negative thing. And then what'd you say you wanted to hear about the engagement?
Just how that happened. Like he was still in prison, right? When that happened?
Okay. Yeah. So we always said husband and wife because of our commitment to one another. Yeah. But I always said, I will never marry you inside. And he didn't push for it because number one, I want to have a wedding on the outside. And number two, I will never stop fighting for you to give me that. So as long as we're together, we'll be together until I can get you out so we can have our happily ever after, our white wedding.
Good for you. So you honored your boundary for sure.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so the day after, I think he got out, he proposed to me. I have the whole thing on video. It's on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Cute.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, it's like when I'm hearing it, you take out the prison situation, the interaction sounds very like a regular long distance relationship. Like, because you two are very normal people.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he did whatever he did, whatever, but he was demonstrating to you repeatedly with what he was doing in prison that made you, I'm sure along the way, like, this is a good guy. In that talk that you had with yourself every day that you said you had, like reevaluating the situation. Do I want this? Is he for real? I'm sure there were times when you questioned yourself or doubted, like, am I seeing this right? Like for real? Is he for real? I mean, he did some really amazing things that I'm sure you just could not deny.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which made you feel probably very assured that you were doing the right thing. That
100%.
Right.
Yeah. I always said I would never do this for anybody else or with anybody else. He made it worth it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the takeaway too for the listeners. Don't go find somebody in prison on purpose. But I think the takeaway is find that person. Find that person that you would do all of those things for, be loyal to.
Right.
And you wouldn't want to do it for anybody else.
Oh, that's so amazing. And the other takeaway is to be able to do that, you definitely need to have that stillness and that connection with yourself and follow what is truth. But you need to know what is your truth. You need to know what that feels like, what truth feels like to you. Is it your heart? Is it what that feeling is? To cultivate that, how do you recommend people cultivate that knowing of themselves? What do you use? What did you tell the women in your nonprofit?
I think it's time.
It's time.
Yeah. And, we're in this society, myself, I'm so guilty of this. Like, we want everything immediately, instant gratification. And I think when it comes to a relationship, it's not going to be instant gratification. It's going to feel really, really good in the beginning, but you have to spend that time together so you learn how to work through all of the kinks. And then I think your gut will know. You have to reevaluate every single day. Is this the right one for me? Do I want to continue to do this? Whether it's right or wrong, I got to choose if I wanted to keep going. He could be the most amazing man on the planet, but if I didn't want to keep giving my all to this and I just wanted to, be with somebody on the outside and go on with my life at that moment, then that was my choice. Because I always said, and this is what I always advised the people in my nonprofit, nobody is holding a gun to your head and saying you have to stay here.
Right.
And I think once you empower yourself to take control in any area of your life, right? That could be a relationship, that could be your job, that could be anything, then you hold the keys and it feels so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. I wanted to go back to one of the things you said at the beginning, that like, oh God, I felt so pathetic in the beginning.
Yeah.
When did that change for you? When did you not feel like you were, so pathetic?
I feel like it took for him getting out. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy because I was the crazy person until he came home, because I always said, like, I refuse to believe that he's not coming home. This is too crazy. It's too unfair. Someday somebody's going to see the injustice and help us out, and justice will prevail. It might take a really long time, but I always knew it would. And I always said, like, I'm going to fight for this or I'm going to die trying. It's the extremists in us.
Yeah.
So, but I knew it. But it was hard to explain that to people when somebody, or you feel like, and this was me inflicting this on myself, but I felt like every day people were calling me crazy and doubting me or thinking that he's lying to me or this and that. So until he got out, and once he got out, it was crazy. People were like lining up at my door, not really, but like lining up, like, tell me about the law of attraction. Tell me how to manifest this.
OMG. See?
Yeah.
I just read something on Instagram today. I'm totally going to butcher it, but they said something to the effect of the people are going to like belittle and put you down and whatever until the day you become successful. Yes. They will applaud you. Something like that. Yes. And you're literally just saying what I was reading today. And like, it's so exactly in all of my experiences, the same thing. People like scatter. And then all of a sudden when you're like doing successful, have a podcast, have all these things. Oh, they all come out of the woodwork. How did you do it? What? And it's okay. It's just it seems so unfair in the process, but that is also part of the journey of self-evolution is you have to go it alone because it is a journey of yourself. So it's a cruel seeming way that people put you down or you feel isolated or you feel like you need to isolate yourself because people don't understand. But that seeming unjust treatment is exactly what's needed for you to make that shift to become triumphant.
Yeah.
So crazy. So people came to you and
it came to me. And I think in response to what you just said, like it goes back to my girlfriend's words in the car all those years ago, follow your heart, right? Because people are going to judge you and they're going to say these things and give you advice based off of their own life and their experiences. Yeah. But they can't dictate what's best for your life based on their life experiences. And that's what I dealt with for so many years. And from the outside looking in, sure, like I was dating a lifer in prison. Of course, people that loved me were going to try to talk me out of it. And that's a lesson that I teach. And that's something that I had to learn within myself. Like, I get it. And I love you. And I understand that that's love. I understand that you're doing that because, I mean, really, that does seem pretty crazy. But I think, I think the lesson in that for me that I teach also is that you can learn to agree to disagree on that. And then don't let somebody beat you up. Like you have to set your boundaries and go back and say like, okay, Mom, I get it. And I'm going to come over because you invited me, but we're not going to talk about this because we're going to agree to disagree on it. And if you do talk about it, then I'm going to have to leave. And the first time you actually have to leave. And then the next time, hopefully she doesn't talk about it. And that's what I had to do for a lot of years was just agree to disagree. Stay quiet about it. And then the people that wanted to be loud about it, I didn't want to talk about it. We're not going to talk about this because we're just never going to agree.
Right. And one thing that I learned on my journey, you talk about boundaries, I would always talk about and thought about boundaries with other people in the sense that I have to have boundaries with them. Like that person, I'm thinking, talking to myself, that person, and they do this, and I have to have a boundary because I don't want them doing this. And it wasn't until several years after I really started understanding what boundaries were that I'm like, dude, it's boundaries with yourself. It's not, you can't control them. They can still bulldoze boundaries, which I discovered even when you have boundaries with other people, they can bulldoze them. And then I'm like, well, then what the fuck is the purpose of having boundaries if they're going to bulldoze them? And then I wouldn't do anything about it. And I'm like, oh, it took me time and time again of learning about boundaries and what are boundaries and oh, they're boundaries with myself. Because I'm the one who controls the boundaries. They can choose to not like the boundary, but I don't have to let them bulldoze them, A. B, if they do not respect the boundary, there are consequences. And that was like totally a shift for me because I'm like, now I'm 1,000% in control and empowered. It's not about boundary for the other person. It's boundary for me to honor me, to love me, and ensure that I'm not disrupted. It was like a light bulb moment. I'm like, holy shit, boundaries are for me, not for the other person.
Yeah. And that's why people need to listen to your podcast. Because how many years did it take you to get there? Me too.
So
and you
long.
Just dropped that golden nugget. It's amazing.
I mean, but I had heard it before, people talking about boundaries and having them and what it means. And again, like the hows of it wasn't so much the how, it was for whom really the boundary is for. It's not for other people. It's for myself. It just happens to involve other people. And then you have to, when you have a boundary, you need to understand why you're having the boundary, how it's serving you, what you're going to do if the boundary is broken. If I break my own boundary, like I'm in this point where I'm practicing some really amazing new next level boundaries for myself. And I have to be I've got a whole plan. I've did my whole process. And now I'm at that action step where I'm like, okay, if I'm holding myself accountable, because I'm not a victim.
Exactly.
That was the thing. I was always feeling like a victim of other people's bulldozing. And it was not the case. Yeah. And boundaries can be flexible. They can be like doors. You can change them. People can come closer or further away from you. You get to decide all of that. But I'm realizing that, okay, I've up-leveled my experience, how I want to be and this boundary. And now it's about keeping myself accountable and saying, okay, it's about you, Leslie, checking my behavior. Am I allowing my boundary to come down? Did I cross that? It is all about me. Self-love and boundaries it's a very selfish experience in the good way.
Yes.
Selfishness in the most beautiful way, because it really is about our experience. No one can affect us. Yeah. They can influence, there can be circumstances that impact us, but we get to create the story, decide how we're going to work with it, decide really everything within that construct to the point where we could make that circumstance irrelevant.
Yes.
Right? And for me, boundaries is like the number one thing that we have to have after knowing our intention and our goal, to be successful in our, self-evolution or whatever it is that we're dealing with.
Of course. And what a way to build self-confidence too, because you're not trying to control somebody. You stay and bulldoze over here. Right. I'm leaving. So you're not trying to control somebody's bulldozing. Like that's you. Do you live your life over here. You could talk about me when I leave. I won't hear it. Right. But I'm going to stick within my boundaries and I'm going to leave. So it's so empowering. You're in control of yourself.
It feels so good.
Yeah. And you build confidence because you're like, okay, I did that. I walked away.
And going back to what you said before about responses from people, ooh, you get to find out who, what the person really is all about when you have a boundary and they may not like it or they try to weasel around it, and you're just standing in your truth. And wow, it's very illuminating.
Yeah.
And then being able to just say, okay, well, you disrespected that, or you're not honoring. Okay, that's fine. Like, you don't have to, but then I go. You know how many people they cannot compute that. When you have a boundary and you're like, if that doesn't work for you, that's okay.
Yeah.
And then you just walk away or you do your thing. Wait, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You trigger because we all want love. Like in us, we all have these insecurities about being loved or unloved, whatever, depending on if you've reconciled or where you're at in your self-love. People don't like when people just turn away from them because they're honoring and loving themselves. People who are not secure or not confident or have low self-esteem, they get highly triggered when you just say, okay, that's fine. Yeah. It's like they expect you to, some toxic, unhealthy people, they expect you to like just cave to them. And when you're like, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just, you don't need to be a part of this experience.
Yeah. So it reminds me of this story where one of my girlfriends, she was so awesome. Like she was dating a guy who was in prison as well. That's how we met, through the nonprofit, right? And she's like, it's so bizarre because people ask me all the time, like, he's got 5 more years. What about sex, right? So she's like, oh yeah, when's the last time you had sex? So the point in me telling you that is, I read the other day too, and it's the same thing where somebody asks you an insulting question, right? And you're like, you really just asked me that? Just ask them back, why would you ask me that? And it's so empowering for you because you're literally like, why would you ask me that? And it almost disarms that person. Like, why did I ask them that? And if they're an asshole, like they'll keep going. But most of the time, that's a way to live within your boundaries. Like, I'm not going to sit here and answer your ridiculous question, or I'll answer it with a ridiculous answer, like my girlfriend Jo, who's like, oh, and when did you have sex last? Let's talk about that. Yeah. And then I'll tell you about my relationship.
I like that better.
Yeah.
I like turning it around and asking them that, just because I feel like it's more of like, it startles them. It takes them. When I have tried that before, just why would you ask that? I still feel like the other person, because there are a lot of assholes out there.
Yeah.
They will take that response as you feeling defensive.
Sure.
At times.
Yeah.
But then again, assholes take everything. Like they just don't give a shit about it anyway.
Like,
they can't read.
Just insult her.
Right. Yeah. What do you mean? I'm an amazing person.
I care about you.
I care. Right. I just care. I care.
With this really big insult wrapped up in a pretty little question.
Right. Right. Exactly. I definitely like to just turn the question around or make jokes. I like to use jokes. I'm a very jokey person.
Yeah.
So I try and disarm and then totally divert into something else and then exit. Yeah. Whenever I absolutely can, because it's like those people. We know who you are.
Yeah.
You can't hide from us. All right. We covered a lot today.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want to know a little bit about the future, the next level for Ro, and, your book, any other books? What about the podcast?
Yeah.
Tell us all the good stuff.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about our podcast, which I think you said this, but we shoot it right down the hall in the boys' masculine room. But that's
the boys. Totally in the dude
totally
room.
Totally
I call myself dude when I self-talk because I feel like that taps into my masculine side. So it's okay. It's the dude room, but it's whatever.
It's totally fine. We can, go with the
You know what?
sides.
Maybe I'll do one of my episodes in the other room.
Oh my God, you totally
just to mix
should.
it up.
It's just a different feel.
Yeah.
Both are great. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in the guy room. Okay.
The
yes,
guy room.
the Grittability Podcast.
So,
no, not
I
the.
take us on
not
the left.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not the. No. Grittability Podcast.
You'll find it either way. Just look at Grittability. It's fine. So we're going to do that. We're really excited because that's something we manifested. We talked about that for years and years and years. In our heads, like it was going to be in our house. And I'm like, how's that going to happen? We're going to have these like padded rooms. That didn't sound right, but you know what I mean? Like padded walls. I know. But this is even like it manifested even better. So we're excited about that. And then we're really looking forward to hopefully this year, but turning our story into a book and potentially into a movie, because I just posted the background story of how we met. I couldn't tell that story publicly for so many years until very, very recently because I wouldn't have been able to visit him if I didn't know him before. But that's kind of understandable. Like, you don't want people inside throwing out hooks. I get it.
Of course.
But on the other hand, Adam always says, like, don't you want people to cut off their negative associations and make new ones? I see both sides. Anyway, so I just told that story and people were so enthralled with it. They're commenting like, greatest love story of our century. So I know we have a lot of people that are behind us. So those are our big, big goals, hopefully this year.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you dropped the word, the magic word. I feel like it's Sesame Street. Today's word is manifest.
Yes.
I love that because there's a lot more talk in just the general population about manifesting. Celebrities talking about it. It's like the hot topic right now, even though some of us have been doing it and working with manifestation for a long, long time. So like quick things that you do to manifest.
Okay. So, oh my God, how do I be quick about this?
Maybe not. Yeah, I don't want to like make you just rattle off a couple things. It's a big process to manifest, but some like key takeaways or some important pieces that you do for your manifestation process.
Sure. Okay.
So you don't have to get like super deep.
Yeah. So quick story. When I was competing in fitness, I would get up at 4:00 in the morning, do my 2 hours of cardio. I was trained like an old school bodybuilder. So I would have to get up, do 2 hours of cardio, go to work. On my lunch break, I'd have to do more cardio. Then after work, I'd have to do my lifting, then tanning, then this.
Old school.
It was old school, like zero carb. Well, as close as I could to zero carbs for weeks. It was ridiculous. But anyway.
Wow. I bet you looked great though.
It was insane. Like
you were not healthy, but you looked fantastic.
Thank you for saying that because everyone's like, you're so healthy. Tell me. And I'm like, I'm going to die.
No, I'm going to die and I'm going to go into like chronic fatigue for like 2 years after this. But
I was so
But yes, I look so fantastic.
Take a picture because it's not going to last.
Take a picture of my veins.
Oh my God, the rebound. We'll talk about that another time.
That's another
ridiculous.
I had bad rebound too. Anyway.
Yeah. But in order to fall asleep, because I was so hyped up on caffeine and pre-workout and all that stuff all day long, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. But I would picture myself on stage and having my name called out for my first place trophy. And that's how I would wind myself down to go to sleep. And I was actually doing visualization.
Nice.
And there's this story about Michael Phelps at the Beijing Olympics. Have you heard this story when he won the gold medal? No. Okay. So he got water in his goggles. His goggles broke right when he dove into the pool.
Oh, wow.
And he had to swim the whole thing blind and he still won the gold. So they asked him after the fact, like, how did you even do that? You couldn't see. He said, I watched the videotapes. And what he meant by that was his coach used to make him go home after every practice and watch the videotapes, meaning play it back in his head, visualize. Wow. So part of manifesting is seeing yourself there, visualizing it. I just gave myself chills telling that story. I love that story. Oh, wow. So that's one. Number two, setting the goal, putting it out there. But it's so hard to do this. Letting go of the how. How am I going to get there?
Ooh, my belly just let go.
Yes.
That is so powerful.
Yes.
It is. I have problems with that too. Letting go of the how.
Because we're control freaks, right? Like
magic cannot happen from our limited human reptilian type brains.
Yes.
We cannot comprehend. Magic happens when we let go and we just like, it's so magical. It's so magical.
So magical.
Manifestation is magical. We cannot control when we think and we want it to be a certain way. We're resisting that.
100%.
Right?
This is such a simple analogy. I almost feel silly saying it, but when you put on your GPS and there's an accident on the route that you're driving, it'll reroute you and it'll take you in a different way and you'll still get to the same destination. So just picture it like that.
So cool.
Right?
Just ease. Like
ease.
Just be easy.
So easy for us to say. But
yes. Yeah. So that's where getting quiet comes in.
Yes.
Stop the mind chatter. Just trust. Learn to build trust in the path and watch for, I'm going to add to that, watching for those like serendipity, those signs.
Yes.
And then follow those.
Yeah.
Follow those little nudges of, oh, this might be something that will prompt me to, and sometimes it's something that's like taking the wrong turn and going somewhere and getting stopped and stopping at the coffee shop and then meeting someone that gets you to, like, those things can't happen when you're thinking and forcing and rushing and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Right? Those are magical moments.
Yeah. And I think the last thing is you have to get crystal clear on your goal and you have to reassess, like, is that actually what I want? is that what somebody else wants for me? Is that what I told myself I wanted? But like in my gut, I'm like, you know what? Like I'm making every excuse not to do it, not to get there because you really don't want it. Or maybe today I want it. Maybe next week I just don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
Get crystal clear on your goal. And if you want it today, go for it. And if you don't want it next week, it's okay. Let it go.
Right. Yes, I love that. And this is, I mean, it all comes back to authenticity.
Yes.
So we were talking before we started recording about authentic. I'm all about wanting people. I am truly a freedom facilitator. That's what I do. I want people to be free of their conditioning and come into their authenticity, their authentic self, and love that person. And by loving who you are, and again, love is another one of those words that are very charged for people.
Yeah.
Like spirituality is charged. Love is very charged because people have so much hurt around those things. But when you really love yourself, meaning you're authentic, and you just don't care about the conditioning or society or whatever it is that you know, the constructs that are resisting you, you just be you. You get to create a life that is so bliss-filled, so happy and all of those things, but you need to be able to connect with who that is. Getting clear helps you. Getting quiet helps you connect with that part so that you know what it is that you want. So I keep the theme of getting quiet keeps coming up here today as like the root of all of the things that we're saying. And it's super fundamental from which you need to build that authentic decision, that authentic goal and intuition or intention from which you can build everything else. So yeah, clarity is absolutely key.
Yes.
And I like that. If it doesn't work or you lose momentum, is it you just don't want to do it? Is it a bad day? Do you feel too hard? Are there other roadblocks that are popping up that you need to just work through? Like some people don't even know what they want, or they think they want it, but then they just kind of want to give up because it's too hard.
Yeah.
That's a whole other bag of beans to talk about.
Yes. Yeah.
But amazing takeaways. Thank you so much. I think that's a wrap for today. We have so much more we need to talk about.
This was so fun, though. This was not even close to the direction I thought we were going.
Me either. I have my notes here, and I'm like, whatever.
But I needed this. Like, you know what? Like, I feel like I fell out of it for a little while because I used to teach it a lot. And I told you, like, the nonprofit, I kind of stepped away for a little bit. Yeah. So I feel reinvigorated. So thank you.
We're going to wake up that nonprofit.
Yes.
I would love that. I know there's a lot of women that would benefit from that for sure. And the tools and strategies in the book, like there's a lot that you can feed in, especially with, you know, getting this movie made. See, I'm talking as if it's happening.
I love
it
this.
is.
Yeah.
And feeding into the Grittability podcast, because there's I've watched a lot of your social media, and I watched the first episode because you guys just came into my life, and really amazing. Like it's really amazing what you guys are doing.
Thank
this sort of, I call it your brand, like the brand that you're building and the bigger mission for what you want to do in this world. And it's just so beautiful. Keep being amazing.
Thank you.
You've been such a gift.
Yes.
Thank you.
Back at you.
Thank you to Sticky Paws Studios for hosting us here. It's so amazing. All of you wanting to start your podcast, come here. Definitely do it. Be in the girl room or the dude room. Whichever. Doesn't matter. Or you can bounce back and forth. I'm sure they'll let you do that.
You have to come on Grittability too.
Okay, I will.
Then
Done.
You can be in the dude room. Okay.
Invitation accepted.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Until next time.